your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and
Well, I'm Nikki, and I'm going to just start out sharing my testimony. So I don't know what will come out this time, but we'll see. I was born in Ohio, and I had two praying grandmas. I had a Mennonite and a Baptist that made sure I got on every church bus, and loved the church bus ministry. I did verses for candy bars, and anyways, I grew up. I didn't know how important those prayers would be. I have there's 5 of us, and a couple half siblings, all of us family, and my mom was married 10 times to 7 different men, so we kind of grew up. Our parents got divorced young, and I do remember right in the middle of the divorce, I remember my mom taking me to church because one of the Sunday school teachers was leaving. It was like a Saturday night. I was all excited because she didn't go to church, but she made sure that I got to go to say goodbye. And this Sunday school teacher, there was a whole bunch of people in the church, and her favorite song was Just As I Am. So they sang that, and I knelt down at my seat and just bawling and accepted Jesus into my heart that night. And so I loved Jesus growing up. As a teenager, I got a lot more fired up about it. But growing up was difficult. My mom met men at bars, would marry them, bring them home, and generally they were pretty abusive. And we had one stepdad that was into guns. So he was a gun trader, so we're out in the country with all these guns, and he would just, in the middle of the night, wake you up and throw you down the stairs and beat you with the end of the rifle till you just couldn't walk up the stairs anymore. So we kind of was that way. And then we were out in the country when I was 14, and my oldest sister didn't live at home anymore. She was down the street at my grandma's. I didn't really know why she wasn't there. So it was me and my 4-year-old sister. And so he just decided that he was going to kill himself. So he was going to lock me or my mom and my sister in the shed. But he said that he needed someone out there to unlock the shed when he killed himself. And so he gave me the key, and supposedly. And I knew when my mom was going to the shed that things had changed, and I was begging her not to go. And she was like, it's going to be okay. And so she was locked in the shed maybe 3 hours, and I was abused in every room in that house, and I was raped, I was beaten. It was not a good experience. The next day I knew that I had to tell my mom all that happened when he was in the shed, because he had just got her out and said he decided not to kill himself. And so I told her, and even at that point I didn't live there. I was home on the weekends because he kept telling her that if I wasn't there, then he wouldn't beat me. So I had pastors in our church that would take me in. I was kind of wherever. And so right away my mom believed me and found out my older sister, that he had tried with her, but she got the gun away. My younger sister had some stuff she had got from him trying with her. So, my mom was all with us, and we were, Jane Doe, and we were in hiding for a while. And when Mom came out, she went right back when he got out on bail. So, I went to Indiana with my dad to go back and forth to court, because this was Ohio. And pretty much that was October, and April 23rd on my birthday, he shot my mom and killed himself. So my mom is still living. She's still an alcoholic, still struggling. And, I thought, that I didn't know how God could take care of that. I loved God. I still served God. I just hurt. And so I just tried to put a smile on my face, go to church and do that type of thing. And then when I lived with my dad, my stepmom, pretty much at 16, you're out of the house. And so a pastor across the street took me in until a family took me in when I was almost 18. It was a Christian family. They took me into their home, and the first small group, I met Scott. So we dated for a while and got married when I was 20. But I still really hadn't dealt with all the hurt, and really still didn't. I guess I kind of felt cursed sometimes that there was something wrong with me. But I wanted a family, so we started a few years later having a family. And then that wasn't real easy. I had something that caused them to come early. So our first one wasn't too bad, only 6 or 7 weeks early. And She's still living. She's Tara, and she gave us 2 amazing grandbabies. And then, the next couple were very early, and 1 pound 9 ounces, and 1 pound 9.5. So they lived. One lived for 2 weeks and died, and one lived for 8 months and died. And so we kind of struggled. Then we had a miscarriage at 4.5 months, and then we have Cameron, who's our youngest. We have 2, and he's 20. He was 2 pounds 1 ounce, and he's deaf. So I started signing with that to learn how to communicate with my son. When Time to Revive came, I had overcome an addiction. I guess I'll go back, but right after the whole kid thing, it was shortly after the last one in 2000 and early 2000s. But I was on a bunch of pain meds. They gave me some Darvocet and gave me hundreds of them. And before you knew it, I was taking 30 a day, and I didn't know who you were. I was falling asleep in my potatoes. I was not who God had created me to be, and I was not making good choices. Shortly after that, I did want my family, so I did get help, and I was in that probably 1.5 to 2 years before I got the help. And as I was going through that, I was going through steps to freedom. I was going through just asking God to help me because I just hurt, and I felt very insecure, and I loved God, but I just didn't know what his purpose was for my life. I didn't know how to get rid of all the pain. I was even at Christian counselors that looked at my husband and said, if she's been through all this, there's nothing I can do for her. So I really felt a little bit hopeless, even though I believed in God, and I studied and I prayed. And we just celebrated 15 years since I've been on that medicine. And, but when Time to Revive came 2 years ago, I was sitting in a seat, and they said they wanted to do this, just have us close our eyes and just ask God to take us where he wanted to take us. And for some reason, I saw those steps that I was beat down with that rifle, and beaten down, and then I have to go to the light, turn on the light, and then when he said I had to turn it off and come back up, crawl up, or whatever I could do to get up there, and call him some bad names. And so right when they said, have God take you to a place of hurt in your life, that was the moment he took me to. And then they said, ask God to show you what was in that moment. And in that moment, I really felt, and first of all, the church, when they told me that, the light in the church went off. And then they said, let's keep at it, but the lights in the church went off. And then I asked the Lord, and as soon as he gave me the answer, the lights in the church went on. It was very cool, but I felt that's when defeat came into my life. And so, I asked God to take that defeat. And then what we do in our ministry is we share the gospel. We go out in the streets, we meet people who've been through a lot of the things I've been through. And so as I began to love on people and listen and do whatever God asked me to do, it's not always share the gospel. They just need loved. They need listened to. They need you to care for them. And a lot of times you can relate to the very thing they're going through because God does that. He lines it all up. And as I did that, I just felt God healing that defeat in my own life. And so a lot of the healing for me that I had searched for years for came when I was intentional about going out and loving other people.
My testimony is a lot different than my wife's. We've got pictures we're going to scroll through. You don't have to look at them. You can look at them. Just gives you a little bit of idea what we're doing. But my testimony is I grew up in church. I grew up with a mom and dad that loved each other. Never fought. Life was pretty easy for me growing up. Very much unlike my wife. Really, my testimony was I was a good person. I went to church. I never drank. I never smoked. I never used bad words. And that was really where my self-worth was, my identity was. I didn't play sports. I was the good kid. And about 10 years ago, maybe a little longer than that, I was confronted with a question at our church, what sin are you dealing with? And it was in a men's group, and the guys in that group were talking about, pornography or anger or addictions. And they got to me, and I'm like, I don't know what my sin I deal with is. I mean, I knew I sinned, and I knew I made mistakes, but I didn't really have that thing I was trying to overcome. And so I really wrestled with that. I prayed through that. And a couple weeks later, I really felt that God had told me my greatest sin is not what I've done. My greatest sin is what I've not done. And I did wrong things. I'm not here to claim that. But it was really the lack of what I was doing. Well, what do you do with that? How do you process that? It literally took years, almost a decade, really for me to understand what that looked like. A lot of the time I tried to work harder, to do better. It was kind of the same thing I was doing before because that's what I knew. When Time to Revive came to my city, it was called Revive, Indiana. It changed my life because I actually saw what I was not doing as a good Christian person versus what I was doing. And I'll share a little bit more about that later. But processing that, going through that, I'm still processing that. So let's start with prayer because I need some prayer because I'm a little bit shaky this morning. So Lord, we thank you for this morning. Lord, I thank you for each one here today. Lord, I pray that you would speak through me today. Give us ears to hear, Lord. It's not what I have to offer, but it's you speaking through me. Lord, I pray that you would bless this time. And Lord, I pray that you would speak to our hearts. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, I will tell you right off, I'm not a pastor. I never went to seminary. Never went to Bible school. I've heard before in the professional word, if you go more than 50 miles, you become a professional. Well, I qualify this morning, so this is what you get. Because I'm not a normal, and I don't preach a lot, I really look back at my former pastors and like, how can I learn from them? What can I do, to make it a better morning for you all? And I had pastors in my time that you always had the bulletin insert, you write in, fill in the blanks. Well, I'm not that intellectual, and so I'm not going to do that today. I had others that use PowerPoints, and I'm not that prepared, so I'm not going to do that either. I had one pastor years ago, and I hated this, but he'd always, in the middle of the service, said, turn to your neighbor and tell him you love him. I'm not going to do that today. So tell your neighbor that you're glad that I'm not going to do that today. All right, that's as funny as I get. So we're gonna talk in 1 Corinthians this morning, chapter 3. I'm going to stop the pictures so you don't get distracted. Chapter 3, verse 11 and following. For no one can lay a foundation other than that which is laid, which is Jesus Christ. Now, if anyone builds on the foundation with gold, silver, or precious stones, wood, hay, or straw, each one's work will become manifest, for the day will disclose it, because each will be revealed by fire, and the fire will test what sort of work each has done. If the work that anyone has built on the foundation survives, he will receive a reward. If anyone's work is burned up, he will suffer loss, though he himself would be saved, but only through the fire. I go back to this passage a lot because in my own life and part of my testimony is that my self-worth as a Christian was how good I was. And maybe I exaggerate that a little bit. It wasn't, but that's really where I was. I went to church with full confidence that I could teach Sunday school, I could motivate people, I could encourage people because I hadn't done that. I hadn't been there. And with that, I read a passage like this. It's talking about building on the foundation of Christ. And you can build with, in this example, 6 different things. 3 are things that won't be consumed. The precious stones, the gold, the silver. But then you got the wood, the straw, and the hay. And I started to think, what is that tangibly in my life? Well, for a lot of years I was a workaholic. I got up early, I went to work, I came home late. I did what needed to be done at work. That was a good thing. Is that precious stones? Is that gold or silver? It might be, I don't know. I really don't know. But if a guy cuts me off in traffic and I don't swear at him and I don't flip him off, is that gold or silver? It's probably just straw. It might be wood. I don't know. I'm not really here to define that today. I just know that most of my life was filled with a lot of wood, straw, and hay. Most of my life was filled with things that were neither good nor bad. They were just filled with what I thought was righteousness. Everybody know what the Bible talks about righteousness? My righteousness is filthy rags. And that hit me. So I look at this passage and I say, where on Judgment Day, because it says on that day, and day is capitalized, it will be revealed with fire. And my prayer really over the last several years has been, Lord, reveal that now so I can work on it. You know, tell me where my useless activities are. You know, if I ride a bike, I want the chain engaged, because if I'm just spinning the pedals, I'm not going anywhere. And I feel like so much of our lives, so much of my life has been pedaling the bike, and I ain't going nowhere. And it's not bad things, it's just the lack of good things. So how do we build our life on a foundation, which is Jesus, with rocks and stones, or precious rocks, gold and silver? Another passage I've went to recently is Acts 3. You don't have to turn there, but Peter and John are going into the temple, like they do a lot of times, and beggars are there. And one beggar says, you know, I want some alms, I want some money. And they looked at him and said, you know, silver and gold have I none, but all that I have I give to you. Well, that's pretty cool. They said, rise up and walk, and he rose up and walked. Now, for most of us, and maybe, you know, I'm not from here, so maybe you guys do this all the time, that's out of the ordinary for me. When I encounter somebody in need, somebody that needs Jesus, somebody who needs help, I go to my silver and gold. How can I help them? You know, I give them some money, or I do something for them. I invite them to my church. What's the difference between what Peter and John did and what I do? Peter and John knew the power of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. They had witnessed it. They had been there. They knew the power that Jesus had. Most of my life, I haven't walked in that realm. Now, I knew it. We all know it. We have that intellectual knowledge. But walking that out was difficult. So I think a lot of times when we encounter people, when we encounter a situation where people are in need, we give them what we have to offer. We give them what we've experienced. You know, when we go out on the street, my job is not to be an attorney. I am not supposed to convince you, argue, debate you. I'm not to try and prove that Jesus is real and the need in your life. I'm really more of a witness. I just tell you what's happened to me, how Jesus has helped me, and that's part of my testimony. You know, if you read through, especially through like Acts, Paul had an amazing story. Every time he was confronted, he just shared his testimony. It was his story. When I'm on the street, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not selling the gospel to anybody. I'm a satisfied customer. I'm just telling you how it worked for me. You know, I'm not talking about the benefits of a product. You know, if you do this, you get this and this and this. I'm just telling you how it's helped me. And I think that's where a lot of times the church in America today, we go back to, hey, I go to church every Sunday. You know, I don't drink and I don't swear. And, you know, when you're out on the street trying to evangelize somebody, or you're sharing with somebody at work or somebody in need, that's really not that appealing to them. Hey, you should come to my church. You should stop swearing. You should stop drinking. You know, it kind of lacks that appeal that Peter and John had when they said, rise up and walk. Do you think that beggar was just happy that he could walk now? He was happy that he saw the power of Jesus real in his life. I have notes, but I rarely follow them. So I am actually encouraged being here. This morning we were a little short on time. Tim told me here you guys go to 2 or 2:30. Is that right? So I'm very, very pleased with that. So I guess going back to our scripture, if we're going to lay a foundation or build upon the foundation, what do we do? How practically do we do that? You know, that can look different ways for different people. My wife and I are involved with an organization. One of our primary roles is to go out and share the gospel. And then we do discipleship followed up with that. I think that's a wonderful thing. But there's also homeless shelters. There's also food pantries. There's also helping crack babies, get through their addictions as infants. There's a lot of good things out there. Some people are called to the UP to be a pastor. Some people are worship leaders. My wife and I are missionaries. We all have different things, but the Bible talks about the body. We all have different functions. So when I say, let's find something to build on, I'm not trying to get you to be part of our ministry. I'm not trying to get you to be a bigger part of your church or whatever. What in your life do you enjoy doing that you think is gold, silver, or precious stones? Are you a generous person? Are you a person that enjoys hospitality? Are you a kind person? Can you pray a prayer that most of us have never experienced? Whatever that is in your life, that's precious stones. That's gold, that's silver. And again, that can look differently for all of us. But whatever that is in your life, do it more. If you're a generous person, if you see that guy on the corner, I don't know if do you have guys on corners up here? We have people that, we flag the cardboard sign, homeless, God bless you, and we give them money. Well, my wife and I are fairly generous, but, that's one of those things that you always wonder, are they just going to go buy alcohol? Are they going to go do drugs? Is it really going to change their life? Well, if you have a tendency to be generous, study generosity. Say, how can I be a generous according to the scriptures and do it well? That's precious stones. That's gold. That's silver. I spun my wheels for most of my life being a good person, and it didn't do what I really wanted it to do. Going back to our scripture, it talks about, it will be revealed with fire, and fire will test the quality of each man's work. If what is built survives, the builder will receive a reward. And then it talks about, if everything I do is burned up, I still will be saved, but only by the fire. So in other words, I still go to heaven. For some of you, that may be all you want. If you read up here, we are saved by grace, not by works. So what we're talking about today is not about salvation. It's not about getting into heaven. It's about the reward. And some of you say, well, as long as I get to heaven, it's all. My mother-in-law is notorious for that. She's the get in by the skin of my teeth Christian. And she knows it. She knows that she is saved by grace, that all that matters. Now, I'm not God. I don't know how God looks on that. I don't know how to judge that. But I know that God is a God that died for us while we were yet sinners. So what I'm asking today is, do you want a reward in heaven? Is that cool? I'm not talking about works to try and earn God's favor. I'm talking about building on His foundation a kingdom that will last. There's no greater joy for me as a believer to say that when I get to heaven, Jesus just might say, well done. A couple years ago, it was right before Christmas, a local pastor in our town gave his wife and his adult children $100 in cash, $20 bills, 5 of them. And he said, it's December 1st. By Christmas, I want you to give that money away. Give it away to a stranger. You can do it all at once. You can do it in increments, however you see fit, but give it away. The pastor's wife shared this testimony, and She said it changed the way she shopped. You go to the mall and there's 18,000 people in one store, and you're frustrated. She opened her eyes and said, okay, who in here can I bless? When she's at the grocery store waiting in line, I'm going to pay for that person's order. I'm going to do that. It gave her new eyes. Well, since we've been a part of this ministry, we have new eyes now. We see people differently than we did before. And for me, that's still a journey. My wife's way better at that than I am. I like to tag along with her because she's, we should go talk to that lady. Okay, I'm in for it. But, it gives us new eyes, and we're not giving away cash. We're giving away something much more precious than that. We're giving away hope. We're giving away peace, joy. We're giving away salvation in a lot of cases. Our home church back in Indiana, this month we're celebrating 175 years as a church. A lot of history there, a lot of generations serving there. I don't know in the history of that 175 years that we've really seen the fruit, the precious stones, the gold, the silver, in the sense of new believers coming to Christ than we have in a couple weeks in Revive. When we go out and intentionally greet our community with the hope of Jesus. I'll give you an example in Greenville, Ohio, smaller community, very rural. We were invited there for 1 week. That 1 week turned into 3. They said, we really don't want you to leave. Can you stay? That's kind of our new trend now. It didn't used to be. We were there 3 weeks. The first week we were asked, it was before school had started, but football practice was going, and we got invited by one of the assistant coaches to share the gospel with the football team. Now it was voluntary, but we shared the gospel. We went through our wristbands and Bibles, and we'll talk more about that tonight. 35 young men stood up and said, I want that. 35 football players said that. Amen to that. How many years in my church has it taken us to reach 35 young people? I won't say, but it's probably not that good. And I'm not bashing our church. Our church ministers to the believers. I'm not bashing that. I'm just making a comparison. In 3 weeks, we saw 244 young people come to Christ. That football team went to another high school football team, and they shared the gospel. And then they went to a soccer team. Then they went to a cheer team. There was one time, it was in that city, I think, we went to a cross-country team, a football team, and a cheer squad, all in the same afternoon. One team went, and we shared, because of time of practice, we shared individually with all 3 groups. We shared with the first team, and a few people got saved. We went to the football team, a few more people got saved. We went to the cheer squad, and little did we know, the next day was a competition. So they were in the gym with parents and grandparents in the bleachers. We had kids from elementary all the way up to high school. And it was awkward because we weren't prepared for that many. But we basically spoke to the girls on the mat, and then we addressed the crowd. One of the girls that stood up to accept Jesus for the very first time, her brother had just done that with the football team. Her parents were in the stand. Her parents stood up too. Now, I can't judge people. I don't know where they were in their life or their walk, but the parents didn't look like people in my church. They didn't look like people you would just expect to be Christians. One family was radically changed in an afternoon because we were intentional. Because we said, this actually is gold or silver in the kingdom. Maybe we could do that today. I love that. We just got back from Texas this spring. We were there intentionally for 50 days going out. Dallas-Fort Worth is huge, 7 million people. During that time, we had a lot of people saved. Right now we have almost 2,000 people that are in a discipleship program walking out week by week on a year-long program. These aren't people that just said yes to Jesus. These are people that said, yes, I want what you've got to offer, but I also want someone to teach me. I want somebody to walk with me. It's not a Bible study in a church. It's sitting at Starbucks or McDonald's or wherever they choose to meet and saying week by week, I'm going to talk you through this. In Greenville, Ohio, one of the guys we encountered, skinny guy, tall guy, tattoos all over him, biggest heroin dealer in that area. He got saved. Does he need discipleship? You bet. We sit him in a pew over here. He'll last 1 or 2 weeks, and he's gone. He was actually matched with one of the local pastors. The pastor said, I'm totally inadequate to do this. Both of them felt like, and he has relapsed, he's come back, but he actually went into the jail with the jail ministry, and everybody there knew him. He had been arrested over 100 times in his life. He knew the guys there. And they're like, what are you doing? He said, my life is different. Jim Cymbala wrote in one of his books, there's no greater sermon than evidence of a life changed. My life, I was never the druggie. My life never had that conversion experience. My life was changed 2.5 years ago when I met Time to Revive. My life was changed because I got the chain back on the pedals. Not that I'm perfect, but what I'm seeing now is results I had never seen sitting in a pew. Nothing wrong with sitting in a pew. But being intentional, whatever that is. And again, that can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Find what that is for you. Is it my time's up probably?
You're on the clock,
We're going to close with a video. Video's Jim Cymbala. He's the pastor of Brooklyn Tabernacle. Tremendous outreach to the homeless and so forth. The video will speak for itself. But I'll tell you, my wife she shared a little bit about her addiction. During that 1.5 years or so forth, it was evident that my wife was struggling, and I was the good hero at home. I was the guy that wasn't struggling. I was the rock. I was this or that. My wife taught me a lot about life. We're not supposed to hate people. Hate's way over there, and I'm over here. I didn't hate anybody. I was a good person. Problem is, love is over there, and I was here. I thought my righteousness was worth something because I didn't hate anybody. I didn't get angry. I didn't flip off the guy that cut me off in traffic. I also never loved that guy. My life was full of indifference, and I'm still learning. I'm still processing what that looks like. But it's changed my life. Tonight, if you want to come tonight for ice cream, so there's a poll there. If you want to come tonight, we're going to share more about the ministry, about what we do, how it's really impacted different communities and so forth. But I'll let you watch this video, and I'll let Tim close after that.
I had a crisis event happen to me in our previous facility on an Easter Sunday when I preached for the 3rd time that day, was bone tired. Poured out myself. The singers, choir had done a cantata, and people had come to Christ, and I prayed, and I got through with the meeting. The other building had a platform with no steps, so it was my habit to just sit like this and let my feet dangle down on the edge of the platform. And I was like, right, it was just about this same angle with the middle aisle. And I'm just saying, so tired. I remember taking my knot on my tie and loosening it and saying, you know what, I'm just gonna chill. And Carol was playing just like Jamal's playing now, exactly. People praying, workers, deacons helping. And I was tired. I want to go home. Hadn't eaten all day. And then I look, and around the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row, there's a guy in the aisle around level with the 5th row. He had a cap, filthy cap, but he had it in his hand. And he was staring at me and looking at me, and I could tell by his eyes, like he wanted to know, could he come up here and talk to me? And I just looked at him a little closer. Man, the guy was disheveled, filthy looking, matted hair, a mess. He looked in his 50s. He actually was 31. And I just looked at him. And I thought, because Everton, Julia, they remember back in that building, we had a lot of people panhandling in the church. They would come in and ask for money, and we had procedures of what to do when people ask for money. So we don't want to build their habit and hand them money. They'll just go out and drink it. And I thought to myself, what a bummer, because I'm going to have to give money. I'm not even going to go through the procedures. I'm going to just give this guy some money. I had no wallet then. I had a money clip. So I waved him up, and he came. So I'm here. He got to about 5-6 feet away from me. Whoa, 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 whoa. Smell? No, a smell? You think you've smelled something? I'll match that smell with anything you've ever smelled in your life. A mixture of feces, urine, sweat, street, and alcohol. Stir gently and let it cook for a while, and that's what I smell. Nasty. I looked away to inhale, and I started questioning, what's your name, David? Okay, I'm a minister. Let me go through at least the procedures here. So, man, you look bad. I didn't know he was laying in his own urine right outside the side door on Park Place in that building. And he heard the music, and it drew him in. He was just sprawled laying out there. So he's there. Oh, Lord. Where'd you sleep last night? Deserted truck. How come you're not in a shelter? Too dangerous. Almost got killed the last one I was in. Okay. Man, this guy smells bad. Missing one or two teeth. At least one right in the front. Let me give him $5, something. Not the way I wanted to end the day, but, you know, what can you do? Took out the money. I remember handing it. Pushed it down. He said, I don't want your money. I want this Jesus you were talking about. And at that moment, I forgot all about David, because I knew who was really in need of prayer. It was Jim Simbala. It wasn't David. So I forgot him. I lifted my hands like I'm going to ask you to do in a moment. And I just said, God, please forgive me. What have I become? What kind of cheap two-bit preacher have I become? You sent somebody who's searching for you. And I want to give him a few dollars and get rid of him. Please help me. And God, that moment, baptized me with a love, with something, with grace. He saw how pitiful I was. And David knew it. And he drew close to me. And I started to cry. And he started to cry. And then he fell against me. And he put his head over here. And I put my arms around him. And he put his arms around me. And for a while, we just rocked back and forth. A preacher in need of God. A guy from the street in need of God. I'm not sure who was needy, or might have been me. You know what God spoke to me that moment? And this is not trendy at all. Those of you who want to go to like church growth institutes, this is not what this church is about. God spoke to me and said, you see that smell? If you don't love that smell, I can never use you. Because the whole world smells that way to me. All the stinking, filthy sin of mankind. I sent my son to die for that smell. So you're either going to embrace it and love people in my name, or I can't use you. I'll put you on the shelf. And if God is my witness, you can believe it or not, suddenly that smell became like the most beautiful lady's perfume you ever smelled in your life. It was just overwhelmed me. He was weeping, I was weeping. I led him to Christ. We prayed, we detoxed him for 4 or 5 days. Hired him on church staff, housekeeping. He spent Thanksgiving and Christmas at my house that year. My buddy got his teeth fixed, handsome guy. For that Christmas, all he had, he gave me a handkerchief. He wrapped it up in wrapping paper, gave me a white handkerchief. I kept it for years. It meant more to me than anything anyone could give me. You could have bought me a car. I would have said, keep your car. Give me that handkerchief. And what broke him and what broke me is God's love. Brothers and sisters, let's walk in love this year. Let's think about other people. Let's love other people. If they're different than us, think different than us, look different than us, smell different than us. I didn't grow up around that smell. I was blessed, fortunate, middle class, Polish, Ukrainian, middle class home. That wasn't my world. But it's God's world. And he wants to use all of us.